The four sisters were a pretty sight that night. They looked serenely down at Lightbather, mocking her as her world fell apart. For all their beauty, the sisters were saying ill fortune, and she had no reason not to believe them as screams plagued her from the city below. Smoke billowed up to obscure pure white Kana, sister of peace, who was in her waning crescent and already nearly invisible. Burning red Geth, sister of war, however, was full and ripe and casting her gaze upon them. Deep blue Satara, sister of justice, had hidden her face from them completely, and a cloud drifted over her dark form to hide her further. Only quick yellow Hala, sister of travel, gave good signs. The smallest and fastest of the sisters was in her half form, signifying that tonight was a prime opportunity for traveling in secret. It was cold comfort, but it would have to do. Traveling in secret was the aim, after all. She hurried to the launch bay, calming the squirming bundle in her arms with a gentle pass of a few of her smaller tentacles. The sleeping form stilled again, its growing sounds quieted as she slipped further into the facility. A daughter of Geth saluted her as she left the viewing platform, face haggard. She looked as if she'd only recently come from the fighting, missing several tentacles. The red sash denoting her service to the sister of war tattered and stained in blood. For her to be in here and not out there, things really had to be bad. For her to be here alone and not with her sisters. Well, the idea was painful to consider. Head scientist Lightbather, she said, voice still firm even in her clear exhaustion. Eldest daughter Shadow Dancer. She greeted in turn. How go the troubles? The Hala are closing in. We're the last city standing and I fear we have little time, she said, not bothering to sugarcoat their predicament. Are all of your preparations complete? As complete as they're going to get. Lightbather sighed. There's so much I never got to say. So many things I'll never be able to tell him. Her voice was mournful, and several of her smaller tentacles fidgeted among themselves in her nervousness. May Sister Hala watch over him, Shadow Dancer said solemnly. She brings good tidings tonight. She is the only one. Lightbather sighed. But I'll take what comfort I can cling to. Shadow Dancer fell into step behind her as they made their way into the launch bay. What would usually be a bustling scene as the launch was prepared was a ghost town. Only her husband, senior scientist Fireheart, waited for them. Lightbather, he said, relief evident in his voice. I had worried you'd been detained. I'm sorry for worrying you, my love. I simply wanted a moment to read the sisters. All must go well tonight, or everything is lost, she said, their tentacles weaving affectionately together as they approached each other. He sleeps well, her husband said softly, smaller tentacles running over their swaddled son. Do you think he'll sleep through the journey? We can only hope for his sake. Lightbather said, rocking the fleshy blob in her tentacles to young still, to have more than a few tentacles to curl sleepily in the air as he slumbered. He has a long way to go to reach the safety of the Dark Zone. And you truly believe that this Earth is populated with sentience? He asked. The thought is almost absurd. A whole planet of sentience beyond the rim of known space. It's like something out of a storybook. The readings and measurements don't lie, Fireheart. Everything I know tells me that the only possible explanation for the evidence we've gathered is sentient life. Sentient life beyond the reach of the Hala, Lightbather said. Yes, but to trust them with our son? Fireheart asked, pain etched on his face. What choice do you have? Shadow Dancer asked. The Hala close in on us even as we speak. They are at the doors, slaughtering my sisters. Perhaps they've already been overcome, and every moment spent arguing is one less moment for your son to escape. I only wish we had more time. Fireheart sighed. More time to learn about these sentients, to know if they're trustworthy. 5 hells. I wish we could send more children away. Most of the other children are already gone, Shadow Dancer said, and a disturbed quiet fell over the trio. Prepare the pod for launch, Lightbather said, breaking the silence. We have very little time. The 3 sprung into action, Fireheart heading over to the console as Lightbather gently set her son inside of the pod. It was a small thing, one of the smallest ships they were able to launch. It's why, despite her deepest and more fervent desires, Lightbather could not go with her son on his journey. Only a craft small enough to fit a child would evade detection and pass through the Hyla blockade of their home world. "I love you, little one," she whispered softly to the swaddled bundle, caressing him with her tentacles to soothe him as he stirred slightly. "I need you to know that your father and I loved you so much." "Launch preparations complete. Entering coordinates now," Fireheart said, punching the location of Earth into the pod's targeting computers. "Come say goodbye, Fireheart," Lightbather insisted. "Please, it's the last time he'll see you." As Fireheart got up from the console, an explosion rocked the building, sending him tumbling to the floor. "It's too late for that," Shadow Dancer called, summoning psionic energy to the tips of her largest tentacles. "You have to launch the pod now. They've breached the doors." Fireheart pulled himself up off of the floor, desperately pressing buttons on the console. Lightbather was forced back from her son as the pod closed around him. Another explosion, closer this time, rocked the building. "Get back, Lightbather." "I'm launching the pod," Fireheart said, pressing the button to commence the launch. 10 seconds to launch." A disembodied voice rang out over the base speakers as Lightbather scrambled away from the pod, away from her baby. 9 seconds to launch," it said as Lightbather gathered her own psionic energy, coming to stand by Shadow Dancer as she guarded the door. 8 seconds to launch. Screaming in the hallway as whatever daughters of Geth still remained to defend them were cut down. 7 seconds to launch. The sound of movement growing ever closer. She could hear blasts of psionic energy hitting their targets and bouncing off the walls of the hallway. 6 seconds to launch. Ugly, twisted things swarmed through the doorway on 4 twisted limbs. Pitch-black bodies were clearly meant to move bipedally, but the arms and legs were all wrong. They crawled like crabs, swarming over each other to get at their prey. 5 seconds to launch. Lightbather screamed out her agony as she whipped her psionic energy at the disgusting horde of Hyla genetic abominations. They had taken her home, taken her world, and now they would take her life and her son. But she wouldn't go down without a fight. 4 seconds to launch. Shadow Dancer was much better at this, weaving through the horde and cutting down swaths of the lab-grown nightmares the Hyla used as ground troops. But for everyone she vanquished, 3 more seemed to take its place. 3 seconds to launch. A group of the things broke past the 2 women, heading for Fireheart and the console. If it were destroyed, then everything they'd done would be for naught, and the launch would be cancelled. But Fireheart was quick, tentacles coming out to wrap around throats and limbs. He tore them apart the old-fashioned way, screaming out his blinding rage into the night. 2 seconds to launch. Lightbather was being overwhelmed. She could feel grasping, twisted hands raking and clawing at her even as she continued to fight. She swung her appendages wildly, trying to knock them off of her. She let out a desperate blast of psionic energy, but the waves just kept coming. 1 second to launch. She heard Shadow Dancer scream from somewhere to her left, but there were so many of them. She couldn't see her. She couldn't see anything. Her body was covered in the monsters, and she could feel them tearing at her flesh, shoving it into their twisted maws as she was eaten alive. Launch commencing. Please stand back. Relief flooded her as somewhere behind her, her son was rocketed to safety. They'd done it. It would be the last thing they ever did, but they'd done it. Her son was safe. She stopped fighting, letting the Hyla monsters send her to be with the rest of her people.